Which book do you wish you'd written, and why?
Evelyn Waugh's Brideshead Revisited.
Really? Why?
I say that I think it was the greatest Catholic novel of the 20th century. Though Waugh himself thought his Sword of Honor trilogy was actually better. But I think Brideshead is a masterpiece. It is just incredibly compelling characters grappling with living out the Catholic faith in the modern world and the struggles of that, and showing a conversion that is really it's not sentimental. It's really real, and it's also funny. Beautiful writing. I love Evelyn Waugh not just for the Catholic themes, but for the sentences. I don't think anybody wrote a better English sentence in the 20th century besides Evelyn Waugh, with P.G. Wodehouse being a close second. I wish I would have written anything by Wodehouse, but that's a different question.
Well, welcome to the show, friends. This is Legend Makers. It's all about interviews with authors and writers. Today, we are joined by Daniel McInerny. Am I pronouncing that right?
You are. McInerny.
McInerney. He is an author of fiction for both adults and children. He is an associate professor of philosophy at Christendom College in Front Royal, Virginia. So you just recently, I think Chrism published your novel, The Good Death of Kate Montclair. We're going to talk about that. And you also have a fantasy series for kids that we will get into. So for this show, it's brought to you by LegendFiction, the creative community for Catholic and Orthodox fiction writers. Before diving into the announcement of your new novel, Chrism Press has just put out, who is Daniel, and when did you first start writing? Do you remember the first story you ever wrote?
I did. It might have been called Danny and the Monsters, illustrated by yours truly, stapled together for a binding. That, and I still may have that, I think, in one of my boxes of treasures. I remember showing it to my own kids one day.
Wow.
I have been writing and drawing since I was a very small boy. I have never not wanted to be an artist of some sort. Like many, Walt Disney was a boyhood hero. I used to write him fan letters. Nobody told me he was already dead, but he kept answering, so I kept writing.
Oh, wow.
But as I got older, especially in my college years, I think I began to focus on writing as the way I wanted to, or felt I was being called to be an artist. And I have written throughout my adult years, throughout my academic years. I have rarely not been working on something.
Well, so what was your dream growing up? What kind of an author did you want to be? Or what kind of stories did you want to be telling?
Yeah, I mean, when very young, I wanted to be an animator, hardly knowing what that was. As I got older, college years, I think it was a poet I was thinking of more than anything else. But not long afterward, by the time I was in graduate school, throughout my 20s, I was writing fiction, I was writing novels. That was sort of my main form. But interestingly, as I got a little older, I became very interested in dramatic forms. So I began writing screenplays. The very first screenplay I ever wrote and completed, at least, found an agent in Los Angeles. I've also written stage plays. So I love dramatic forms as well, and always want to keep writing those along with fiction.
So tell us about your fantasy series for children or for teens that you mentioned. What is that one called?
It's called the Kingdom of Patria series. Patria, of course, being the Latin word for homeland. So here's the pitch. 3,000 years ago, refugees from the Trojan War found their way to the New World. They used the Trojan horse that the Greeks had used to break into Troy and reconfigured it as a boat. and they made their way across the Atlantic Ocean, and they landed in what we know as the New World, again, 3,000 years ago. They've been there, they've been here ever since. And they've been kept a secret by the US government. You've heard, of course, of the super secret Area 51. Well, Patria is Area 1. There had to be a first. So it was Thomas Jefferson who first discovered them. I think it was Lewis and Clark who first discovered them, reported them back to Jefferson. And Jefferson, a freedom-loving man, decided to keep this small community secret. It happens to be in northern Indiana, of all places. Okay. Don't tell anyone I said that. And it's still there. It's still thriving. So in the first Patria book, an 11-year-old boy named Oliver Stu stumbles upon this hidden kingdom. And the fun and the hijinks get started from there.
So I do got to ask, we're talking about a medieval or 3,000-year-old Trojans maintaining ancient Greek culture.
That's right.
In modern day, I did not say Indiana. And what kind of hijinks does he get up to?
Well, the Patrians, I should first say, are now a mix of cultures because they have incorporated into their own community Native American cultures. And I weave in other legends of folks coming to the New World. So there's the legend of St. Brendan, Irish monks finding their way to the New World. So there's actually a monastery in Patria. It is a Christian community, though I play that pretty lightly in the books, but it's present. And they have made in those 3,000 years a certain amount of contact with European culture. And so they haven't been completely hermetically sealed off from the world, but so there is a nice intercultural mix there. So when Oliver Stu finds them, the whole problem, of course, is that they weren't supposed to be found. But he is a very bookish boy, hungry for friendship, and he makes friends with a boy and a girl of his age who belong to the royal family of Patria. So things get even more complicated, and they get involved in a mystery that impacts the secrecy of Patria itself.
Wow.
So,
how would you describe the overall feel of? I hope they will enjoy that. Good. What's the feel of the story?
Yeah, I call it the humorous Kingdom of Patria series. It's meant to be broad, indeed farcical humor. P.G. Wodehouse is one of my favorite authors, and I've always had as an ambition and an ideal to write something that was sort of P.G. Wodehouse for kids. And so I needed a community that was very different from the contemporary world. And so Patria just was perfect for that. And it's just a playground for very, very broad farcical humor.
Yeah, and observations on our own culture or self-reflection for teens. That's okay. So moving forward then into your latest novel, I'm curious, is the Good Death of Kate Montclair, recently put out by Chrism. It says here Kate Montclair is dying, and she's arrived at late middle age, loveless, childless, and having failed to achieve the career dreams of her youth. Now she's diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor, and she sees the next 14 months of suffering as an intolerable prospect. Is it just me, or am I getting shades of Brideshead in some of the tones or some of that sense of realism that you touched on?
Yeah. Yes. Kate Montclair is a work of fiction for adults set in the contemporary world with very much contemporary concerns. And yes, certainly Brideshead Revisited was a very strong influence. And it's about a group of It's a dual time mode novel, and so we follow Kate Montclair's story as a young woman teaching in an international school in Rome, and we also find her again in middle age, struggling with a terminal diagnosis. Both in her past and in her present, she is struggling with the whole question of belief. As are her friends. And there was a catastrophe that happened during her Rome years that has impacted her whole life, and which really presses the question of belief. And that is the theme that drives the novel.
So why is this story meaningful to you?
Because it addresses the question of death. What is the meaning of death? How do we comport ourselves to death? That's one big issue. Another thing that really motivated me to write this novel was, well, it began one day when I was in a Panera bakery. And you may know that in Panera bakeries, as you head toward the restroom, there's always a bulletin board with kind of local notices. And I saw this advertisement, very striking one, for something called the Death Cafe.
Okay.
And yeah, that's what I said. Okay. And the border of the advertisement were these, I think, red skeletons lined up head to toe, making up the border. So it caught my eye and I read it. And I even went online and looked at this thing, the Death Cafe, and I found out that it's a real thing. It's people who meet in coffee shops to talk about death. Some people have book clubs. These folks come together to talk about death. And part of me thought, well, this is brilliant. You know, people coming together to talk about the most important question of human life. Well, what is the meaning of our mortality? But another part of me saying this is pathetic that we live in a culture that gives so many people no resources to deal with the most important question of our lives, such that we have to get together with strangers in a coffee shop to deal with it. So my character, Kate Montclair, once she receives terminal diagnosis, realizes that one of her oldest and best friends, back to her Rome years, is now in Washington, D.C., running, I don't call it the Death Cafe, I call it the Death Symposium. And so she reconnects with this old friend. She starts attending meetings at the Death Symposium. But the Death Symposium has a more nefarious purpose than just a chat about death.
I wondered. Okay.
Yes. They are actually also promoting euthanasia.
Yeah.
So Kate's friend Adele Schrader proposes to Kate that if she chooses, she could help her with an assisted suicide. And so that is what propels Kate into the second act of the story.
Gotcha. Yeah, the questions and the grappling. Oh, that's fascinating. I mean, what an intriguing premise. A bulletin board in a Panera sparks a whole novel. It's shifting gears a little bit to come back to the sense of, how shall we say, the need for better Christian or better Catholic fiction, better contribution from Catholics in fiction. And that's what I love about Chrism Press and the kinds of novels that they put out, and the fact that you've got, this novel. I love how they've described it as faith-inspired fiction. How would you describe that, and how is that important to you? Why do you think the world needs more of that?
Yeah. The story of, you're kind of getting into my philosophical concerns as well, because I deal a lot with what G.K. Chesterton called the philosophy of story in my classes. The human story, human life, first of all, is a story. God is the protagonist of that story. We're kind of co-protagonists, but we're living out a story. We're working on our salvation. We're working on our redemption. It could end well. Hopefully it will. It could end ill. We struggle along the way. What stories do at their best is they give us a picture of that human struggle. So I think of faith-filled, faith-inspired fiction as not just a sub marketing category of contemporary fiction. It's the master category of storytelling for human beings. Everything else is derivative from it. And so I'm very proud I'm proud of what Prism Press is doing. I'm proud to be one of their authors. And I think that kind of, that sort of small independent spirit effort is just what is needed in our Catholic culture to promote new writing.
Yeah, agreed. So with this novel then, The Good Death of Kate Montclair, how, again, trying to not give away anything so that people actually get a chance to buy it and enjoy it, but how does this book contribute to, I love how you describe that, the master tier or the ground of
master story, master narrative.
How does this contribute towards that, or how did you tackle that?
Yeah, well, I very much wanted to write, a faith-inspired novel, a Catholic novel. I wanted to try to depict the influence of the Holy Spirit upon unbelieving characters who cannot let the question of faith go. It haunts them. It's haunting their consciences. So, that inspiration fills every syllable of the book. And I can't spoil the ending, but just let me say that the Holy Spirit is at work all the way through.
Beautiful. What's next for you? Are you taking a hiatus, or are you already planning a new project?
I am. I hope to get started on another novel here late spring, early summer.
Exciting.
I have a very happy philosophical task right now. I also do my scholarly work, as I mentioned, on the philosophy of art, philosophy of literature, philosophy of story, and I'm doing revisions on a book right now called The Way of Beauty. It's a philosophical reflection on the arts, and Bishop Barron's Word on Fire Ministry is going to publish that in 2024 under their Word on Fire. They have a new academic scholarly wing of their publication program. And I'm very excited to be publishing with them next year. But I'll turn that in at the end of May, and then I'm going to get back. I'm going to get back to writing fiction.
Do you have any hints on where your next story might go?
I don't know. I may have to go back to Panera. I've got a few ideas in the air, but I have not settled on the idea yet.
Gotcha. All right.
Waiting for the Holy Spirit on that too.
Good deal. Favorite Panera item? What do you choose? What's your default?
Panera. Well, I'm just get a coffee. I like, what's that little pastry with the chocolate in it? The little chocolate bars in it.
Ooh,
that and a cup of coffee is that's a favorite if I'm working there in the morning.
Nice, fantastic. Well, how can people find you online? Where can they learn more about you and get a copy of the book?
Yeah. Well, first of all my books are available at Amazon. Both the Kingdom of Patria series are available in both hardback and paperback. I publish those out of my own company. The Good Death of Kate Montclair, published by Chrism, that's available on Amazon too, but also through their website at chrismpress.com. The best place to find me is on my Substack. So if you go to danielmcinerney.substack.com or just search on The Comic Muse, that's my Substack. You can sign up for free. There's no paywall on my Substack. You can also go to my author website at danielmcinerney.studio, but my Substack is the first place to go.
Fantastic. Yeah, I remember poking around on that before the call and seeing the thoughts on the philosophy of story, and just I want to take your class and hear more about that. Daniel, this is fantastic. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for thank you for the contributions that you're making. I think if we were to wrap with a final question, what advice would you give yourself if you could travel back in time to your younger self as you're beginning? What would you say to yourself?
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. Um, I'm thinking of the first pieces of fiction I wrote, say, in my graduate school years, so mid to late 20s. I wish I had known the market better. I wish
Okay.
I had known how to spend my time researching how to get a piece of work published. I was still very naively putting entire manuscripts in boxes in the mail to publishers to get them returned to me like a boomerang. No conception at that time that one needed to get an agent or that an agent was necessary. And that's something especially young writers need to think about. I was just talking to a student here at Christendom College, very eager to get started with writing, but in the same position, not knowing where to begin. So I wish I'd had a little bit more savvy about that at that time.
Fantastic. Yeah, because the market has changed and things have updated and have gone digital, and it's
Absolutely.
exploded in the last decade. Yeah,
Absolutely.
good point. Thank you so much for coming on, sir. And if people are watching and you're listening to this on the podcast, but if you're getting this on YouTube, please hit that like button. It's going to help more people, especially on YouTube, to discover this conversation and learn more about Daniel's book. Come and check us out at legendfiction.com. It's the online community for Catholic and Orthodox fiction creators. You can check us out, legendfiction.com. Till next time, keep writing. God bless everyone.